Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to what is the final in our series of 3 webinars around rethinking recruitment in a competitive market. Today, we're going to be focusing on the onboarding process and ensuring that we get new recruits moving from being nervous newcomers to that of really high-performing members of the team. So they embed into your culture, they can associate with your brand and values, and they feel part of your business goals and the team performance achieving on those goals. So before we begin, we might actually look at just some housekeeping matters today. And for those of you joining us for the first time today, I'd like to just say to you that we will be recording today's session, so make yourself comfortable, relax and listen. We will give you a copy of the recording after today's session. We'll send that on to you tomorrow with the link. All attendees are on mute for audio and video purposes to ensure no background noise, but if you do wish to participate in some questions to any of the contributors, please feel free to use the question function to the top right hand side of your screen, and we'd encourage you to do that throughout the presentation, because unlike the previous webinars, we're actually going to be taking those questions as the contributors move through their content today. So just do keep up to date with that, and please post the questions promptly if you have them. If you do experience any audio difficulties, you can of course join the audio join the meeting by phone. And just to note as well that to keep everybody engaged, we're going to be encouraging you to engage with the poll questions that we have throughout the session. And it'll give you a feel for how you're doing, but also how everybody else is approaching this stage of the recruitment and onboarding process in their workplaces, so we can share that information with you. So to get started then, and what will the next hour look like? Really, in setting the context for today, we were very conscious of the feedback that a lot of you have been giving us on the ground around, how well you're trying to manage the process. And even at this stage in the onboarding and the settling in and the probationary period, things can go wrong, and the risks are always there to actually people maybe jumping ship to a competitor or moving outside of the industry altogether. So with that in mind, we're very focused today on ways in which we need to look at that and to ensure that actually we minimize the risk of that happening. I don't think we can ever say we can eliminate it, but I think when you hear the experts contributors today, you'll actually get a see and sense of that. So we're going to begin by looking at the onboarding process from an employee's perspective, and we've Dominique O'Sullivan from Action HR Services back to talk to us about that. And I think that's a really good way to start, actually, by stepping into the employee's shoes and understanding what's important and what they're nervous about and anxious about to know in the onboarding and that early induction process. We're going to then invite Nikki Mullen, Head of HR in Primeline, to join us today to look at maybe best practice induction and what we can learn from other industries. And Nikki has extensive experience across both retail and logistics and distribution, as well as FMCG goods. So really looking at the ways in which it's done well in other industries and what can we bring to our industry from that. And following that, then we're going to have Natasha Dowd back from Ankara to talk to us really about where do we take the care of the employee and their development and their training right the way through the probationary period process, so they develop as effective team performers. So from induction onwards through their probation, how should we be managing that, and how should we be managing training and development approach around that? And following that, then Caroline Reedy is back with us from the HR suite to talk to us about really the whole area of managing that probation and ensuring compliance and good record keeping around that. So in actual fact, issues that are arising can be addressed effectively, and it fast tracks the person then embedding in as an effective team performer. And to finish up then, we're going to have Michael Quinn, my colleague from Falch Ireland, back from the Tourism Careers team to really just look at those other supports around the national recruitment that our tourism career colleagues are busy working on and want to share with you today. So without further ado, I think we will get started. And before I introduce our first speaker, Dominica, I might ask Aoife, please, to give us our first audience poll question, if that's all right. And we're going to start with something simple. Just, do you actually conduct a structured staff interview program, yes or no, for your business? So you might give us an indication of that. And while we take your scores and results on that, I'll just highlight then an introduction to Dominica for those who haven't been with us before. Dominique is a CIPD qualified and experienced HR recruitment consultant, and she works as the lead for Action's HR Recruitment Services Division, or HR Services Division, I should say, and they provide basically recruitment solutions to client organisations, really helping them manage to grow their business. She's no stranger to recruitment and selection campaigns. She's worked with worldwide hotel programs like the Hilton Worldwide as HR manager for the Conrad Dublin, and also HR and recruitment specialist for Hilton Ireland Hotels. She also was HR manager for Choice Hotel Group and Delat Hotel Group, and in a separate role she was co-lead for the onboarding of over 600 staff in the preparation of the reopening of Adair Manor back in 2017. So with all of that experience behind her, we're delighted to have Dominica back to talk to us about the onboarding process from the point of view of the new recruit. But before I hand over to her, maybe we'll just take those poll results from this first poll, please, if that's possible. So 76% of you, great to see that 76% of you are actually adopting a really structured approach to staff induction, while 24% of you don't involve yourself in that regard. But I think today you'll get to see some techniques and ways you can do that, even regardless of how big or small your business is, and even whether you're onboarding just one new staff member or looking at a cumulative staff onboarding process. So Dominica, with that, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share some new joiner insights with you today. So as a result of a very well delivered candidate experience, the new joiner has chose to commence employment, and to create a successful onboarding process, you should be really thinking, what is it like to join the team from the employee perspective? And you would do so by essentially putting yourself into employees' shoes and considering their thoughts, feelings, and expectations associated with joining the team. During the recruitment process, we painted an exciting picture, we created an expectation of a great workplace, and now the reality has to match that. If a new joiner encounters dissonance between the expectation and their actual experience, this could lead to them actually choosing to leave the organization. In addition, the onboarding process is where the trust that the employee has decided to put to you as an employer starts being tested. And if we're speaking about employee experience and put yourselves into employees' shoes, it is taken into account the recognition of the fact that it could be really daunting to join a well-gelled organization. And a well-designed and executive onboarding process gives the employees confidence that you are the right employer. It integrates them into the existing team and will also translate into them choosing to stay. From employee perspective, the onboarding process should not only be focused on transactional aspects, so completing the forms and ticking boxes. It should be a welcoming experience that recognizes them as the individual that they are. So moving on to the preparation for day one. It's great to help employees remember everything because there is a lot to take on board. So starting with an email which outlines time, venue, dress code, who to meet, what to bring, lunch arrangements, what to expect, is working really well. And then a phone call to follow up, address concerns, and more importantly, create excitement. Finally, the point is that employees who are coming from abroad need some additional TLC in terms of settling into Irish reality. So helping them and making sure they're okay with accommodation, bank account, and PPS is really vital. So a great employee experience starts with a great arrival experience. So think about what happens when they actually come through the door. Is there a nice, friendly, welcoming team ready to embrace them and welcome them? In addition, especially at the beginning of the day, it could be very daunting to engage in some sort of activity straight away. Therefore, some time to decompress is working really well. And you can achieve so by having music in the background in the room that you have the induction taking place. And you can also take them on a tour first thing, or show them some videos. From employees' perspective, what we also see is working very well is, in general, a blend of delivery methods. So looking at those, we could identify, for example, online training, we could identify some typical PowerPoint presentation, team activities, quizzes, competitions to cement the team. And also, it's vitally important to recognize that people have peaks and dips in energy levels. That's why consider, from employees' perspective, delivering the heavy content in the morning, and perhaps in the afternoon after lunch, when the focus is dwindling, let them have some sort of a team activity. Also, think about the fact that introductions are so important. So make them feel really special on day one, and invite the management team to say hello to them. Invite your star employees to tell them success stories and ignite the fire in them, and be really excited, so they can be really excited about their journey with the organization. And what we also see working really well from employees' perspective is the taste of a guest/customer experience. So inviting them for lunch, for example, in the restaurant, or sometimes letting them stay over if that's possible. In addition, a lot of employees are all very keen to wrap up day one as soon as possible, and that's why it's really important to be prepared for that and have the plan for day two and beyond ready to hand to them. And finally, from the perspective of employees who are working non-traditional hours, think about their experience as well. So is there perhaps a welcome letter from senior management team to say hello to them in a personalized way? And also, could there be some photos of them so that those team members can start recognizing the leadership team if there's any issues? So finally, moving on to some top tips for the rest of the onboarding process. Remember, it's still very daunting to come back for day two. So have somebody there to take them to the clocking machine, to the locker room, and also into the canteen for lunch. And you can do so by implementing a buddy system. And the next speaker, Nikki, is going to tell you more about that. In addition, company induction, especially day one, is usually very well crafted, and then the employee ends up in a department. And the feedback we're hearing is that there isn't enough consistency. So having a well-designed body system is going to help you with overcoming that. Also, think about the fact that the employees are really concerned about making mistakes. So encourage questions and implement learning culture as opposed to a blame culture for making mistakes. And also remember that there is so much that they have to learn. So inform them where they can find resources that might be helpful. So FAQs, SOPs, manuals, and Amanda is going to tell you more about sample documents that you can actually download from Fáilte Island website to help you create your own ones. In addition, think about implementing in training flags to just give employees some comfort that they're not going to be bombarded with questions on day one. And finally, check in with them informally. So formal reviews, probation reviews are super important, but the informal checking to simply ask people how they are going to go a very long way. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikki. And before we hand over to you, I have a question here from the audience. I'm a manager in a really busy operation, and I don't have the time to create the type of experience you're talking about. So, are there any areas you covered that are really most important for me to focus on?
Thank you for the question. So I would say that there absolutely is certain things that need to happen, and that's from compliance perspective. However, some element of employee experience is really important, and absolutely bigger companies can have more resources to deliver that. However, there could be small little touches that you could implement in your own organization that are going to be working for you. But whatever you do, do it very well. And then probably my final piece of advice is feedback. And I know that this is going to be, repeated in the presentation number of times. But again, from employees' perspective, feedback is on tap through social media. It's instant. So therefore, it's vital to give people more than what we think that they need. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dominica. So really great, interesting start there to look at the expectations really from an employee's perspective and understand and put ourselves in the shoes about what they're nervous and anxious about and try to address those questions. And as Dominica said, you know, even a simple thing like, you know, instigating that buddy system very early so they have somebody they feel they can ask the questions to, even if they're not comfortable with asking them of the line manager, and to encourage those questions. So before I introduce our next contributor, Nikki Mullen, to look at the best practice for induction and what we can learn from other industries, I now might take a look at second audience poll question, Aoife, there. So which of the following do you include in your induction programme? And as you're selecting all of those that apply to you and your business, I might just introduce Nikki now. So delighted to have Nikki with us today. Her experience spans over 18 years across retail, manufacturing, FMCG, distribution and supply chain, as well as SME and global multinationals. And she's been involved in helping companies like B&Q Ireland and Lifestyle Sports deliver their HR strategy through engaging and mobilising their people as head of change management and HR. And her work involves her in value-based culture revolution, organisational design, change management, and brilliant people processes, really including things like induction and onboarding to deliver high-performing teams. Nikki's approach, I love it. It's down to earth, it's simple, it's fun. She's a no-nonsense attitude, which is all a perfect combination, I think, for getting things done. So since 2018, she's been involved as head of HR for Primeline with over 1,000 staff, the largest independent Irish provider of logistics, sales and marketing and distribution warehousing to homegrown international and Irish retailers across Ireland and the UK. So really delighted to have Nikki on with us today. But before I hand over to Nikki, if I can take the poll results, please, Aoife, from that second one. So everybody involved, in fairness, really strong performance there on the staff handbook, mandatory health and safety training at about 75%, dropping then to things like team building and meet the team exercise, 36%. And that's an interesting insight, because the more we hear about the reasons why people leave and that sense of not feeling engaged with the culture and stuff, these softer skills, I think, around feeling part of a team and embedding myself in the culture and feeling part of the organisation and aligning to that and those values is really important. So maybe there's a hint there for us to take a little bit more focus on some of those softer skills. But without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Nikki.
That's great, Amanda. Thanks very much. That was a great introduction. So thanks very much for having me here today. So today I'm going to talk to you about induction. So there's three things that I'm going to cover off today. So why would you do an induction, and how to set yourself and your team up for success from an induction perspective. The second part will be about an approach. So what an approach to induction should look like. What should you cover and who should be involved? And the third thing then are the tools that are available to you to be able to download. So things like icebreakers, the buddy system guide, and any check-in and checklist documentation as well as feedback. So before I kind of delve into the detail of this, I have no doubt that many of you on the call today are building for peak and thinking about how you're going to build up your teams. And I suppose if I think about what all of your objectives are in that, I've absolutely no doubt that one of your key objectives will be to create a brilliant customer experience. And in order for you to create a brilliant customer experience, you'll want to do that through a well-oiled team that absolutely play to their strengths. And when we think about a well-oiled team, we think about a team that are on their game, that are playing to their strengths, that interact really, really well together, and that are connected to your business and are real ambassadors for your business as well. What I'd also encourage you to do at this point as well is that in terms of setting yourself up for success, is that so often managers feel when they bring people into the organisation that they're going to put them on trial. But actually, I'd encourage you to think differently and to think, believe that the team are going to succeed, believe that the colleague is going to succeed, and be confident in the decisions that you've made through the recruitment process. So what should an induction program look like, and why would you do an induction program? So if we think about, we've already established that you want to create a brilliant customer experience. So actually it starts with creating a brilliant colleague experience, because your colleagues will directly impact the customer experience. And in terms of why to do it, you want to make colleagues feel welcome and you want them to feel wanted. You want to connect them to each other and create advocacy. You also want to set out your standards and what it is that you expect from day one in terms of the professional tone that you want to put across. You want to cover off things like mandatory training as well, health and safety, HACCP, etc. You want to create excitement, energy and camaraderie and fun. And also, you want to ensure that the colleagues recognise the important role that they play in your business. So in terms of then what an induction programme should look like and what the approach should look like. So in my book, an induction programme isn't a nice to do, it's a must do. And actually there's probably 4 building blocks of an induction programme that I'd recommend. And each one of these is like a bucket. So everything that you want to cover off should fit into one of these buckets. And if you think about IITT, a nice simple way to approach this: introduction, information, training, and a tour. The introduction is all about introducing colleagues to the company and to each other. And you may want to consider then how you're going to set this up. So it's an opportunity here for you to really tell staff who you are as a company, what you stand for, what's important, who are the key people, and it's an opportunity for colleagues to meet each other, whether they're new or they're existing, and start to build their relationships as well. And regardless of the size of your company, you can do this as one day, you can do it as 2 evenings, you can really just tailor it to suit your company. Also, you might want to cover off what your values are, what your mission statement is, and whether or not you have a customer charter. The second part then, or the second bucket, is around the key information that you want to give colleagues: policies and procedures, what the story is with uniforms, whether you have a staff handbook, other business specific information in terms of what your peak times are and how you tailor that, how you talk to colleagues when things are busy, whether you have team huddles before or after the shift. What does the typical day look like? Whether you have a customer charter. And actually, it's also a great idea to have guest FAQs. So if there are certain questions that are asked a lot of the time of your colleagues, that you capture these and give these to your new recruits to set them up for success from the very beginning. And then there's also key colleague information. When will they get their roster? Is there on the job training? What are the other key policies and procedures, such as if they're going to be absent, who do they contact? What are their break times like? Are there uniform standards? Do you do colleague recognition? How do they request time off? Where do they get their payslip? And if there's any other new starter documentation as well. It's also a great opportunity to talk to them about a buddy system, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail later on. So the third area then for you to think about in your induction program is around training. And this can probably fit into 2 buckets. So mandatory training and company specific. So many of you will have a requirement to do HACCP training and food safety training, manual handling, health and safety, GDPR, first aid and fire safety, and any other PPE equipment that your colleagues will use. And then the company-specific training in terms of guest relations and customer service, how to handle difficult situations, and maybe something around upselling or cross-selling if you're in a retail setting. And then the final bucket is around the tour. And Dominica mentioned this a little bit earlier as well. So it's really important for colleagues to understand both the colleague areas and the guest or customer areas as well. So colleague areas such as, do you have a locker room? Where can they put their lunch if they have brought it with them? And then the guest areas in terms of where are the areas that your customers and your guests would most frequent. And if you have a very large premises, you might consider giving them a map as well, just to help them to navigate their way around it. So In terms of the tools that are also available to create this great experience, in the things that you can download, there's suggested icebreakers that you can do with one or more colleagues. These aren't mandatory, these just create a sense of fun, and they break down the barriers as well. I'll come back to the buddy system in a moment. We've also got an induction and a new starter check-in. These are documents just to help you go through all of the necessary things that you want to cover off with the colleagues, and these will vary from business to business. There's also an induction plan in there as well, and a sample agenda in terms of what would the order of an induction program look like for you. There's training templates as well that you can adjust to your business, and maybe that will cover off things like any e-learning or cross training or any on-the-job training as such. And then there's feedback as well. So I would always suggest and recommend that and in the tools there's feedback suggestions as well, and to use sandwich approach. So positive feedback with the constructive feedback, and then finish it off with positive as well. But I mentioned that I just talk about buddy system. I thought it would be worth just maybe spending a minute or two just chatting through that. So while many of you will be familiar with, it's really, really important, and actually it can be a really, really powerful tool for you to use. So a buddy system is where you take your existing colleagues and you partner them with the less experienced and new colleagues that come into your business. And the idea would be that you want to clone the great colleagues that you have. So by picking your best colleagues to buddy with your new colleagues, you're really setting them up for success, and they're learning the gold standard approach to everything. You want to pick somebody that has demonstrated previous strong past performance, somebody who has the time as well to be accessible to the new colleague, somebody who's skilled and knowledgeable in that particular area, somebody who's a peer as well, so that there's no hierarchy as such and people feel comfortable then going to their buddy. Somebody who has really, really good communication skills and interpersonal skills, and somebody who's well regarded and accepted by current employees as well. Your buddies, the buddies that you pick should epitomise your company values and what it is that you stand for as a business. And as I mentioned, in the tools that are available, there's a comprehensive guide that will help you set up your buddy system and go through all the hints and tips that I've just mentioned here. So best of luck with your induction experience. 69% of people are more likely to stay with a company when they've had a positive onboarding and induction experience, and that for me is a good reason to invest time into the induction experience for colleagues.
Thanks, Nikki. Before I let you go, I just have a question in here from somebody that if you had one non-negotiable in terms of what employers must do when inducting and onboarding a colleague, what would that be in your book?
That's a great question, Amanda. I think that the most important thing when people join the company is to make them feel welcome and to continually check in with people, whether it's a simple hello or whether it's a formal check-in at the end of their first week or their first day or anything like that. That's the most important. When people feel appreciated, they go the extra mile. And actually, you know, if we adopted a mindset where we catch people doing things right rather than catching people doing things wrong and reinforce the positive feedback for them, that to me is a real recipe for success.
Great, thanks, Nikki. Some really practical steps there, and as Nikki pointed out, to some really practical tools and templates that you can use. So if you've never done this before, I hope this really makes you feel that you have a blueprint now to get started. And as we've said already with Dominique and Nikki, you know, start at the level you can engage, but some really practical advice there around the buddy system, the communications and keeping that open, and the positive reinforcement. And I think, you know, it's a real, you know, I suppose, reassurance that actually, 69% of people stay if they get that onboarding and that sense of connection and embedding into the business right. So it really is important at this stage that we don't fall at this stage of the hurdle. So we'll now take poll number 3, please, Aoife. So the question here is, do you offer training for those who manage induction, probation and performance reviews in your business? So we'll let you select whichever one there is most suited to you while I introduce Natasha Dowd back from Anchor again. Natasha has over 25 years experience in recruitment across Ireland, the US and the UK, and has a really in-depth understanding of the challenges and demands of the changing talent marketplace. And her corporate training experience spans a lot of different people industries across recruitment, HR, learning and development, sales and customer service, and having been involved in successfully coaching and training recruitment teams to win talent and deliver year-on-year growth. And I'm delighted that that Natasha is now going to talk to us about what do we do from the time we follow on from the early induction days program into that longer term management of the probationary period and support for the employee development right through to ensure that they become really high performing team members. So we might just take, before I hand over to Natasha, the results of that poll, please, Aoife, if that's okay. In terms of offering training to those managing induction, there's about, I suppose, a total of about 33% there, a third of you not sure or not doing it currently. But I do think it really is important because, as we all know, people don't leave organizations, they leave people. And very often it's the people that they're directly reporting to, directly engage with day-to-day as team leaders and line managers that influence that decision most. So without further ado, I'll hand over now to Natasha, who's going to take us through the next stage of the development of the individual post-induction.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon to you. And today I'm going to be taking you through developing new staff as team performers. In the Reopening for Business webinar, Nikki talked about the 4 building blocks that will enable you to build a successful and well-oiled team. I'm going to look at this approach today as you develop new staff as team performers and how this approach is valuable and provides a good insight into what works best. There are 4 building blocks: basic needs, management support, fostering teamwork and growth and development. And the first one relates to providing the tools for the job when somebody starts new. It's not just about the physical tools that you provide or the IT support. It's about providing the go-to person that they need to speak to and making the right introductions, both in the team members and also who their direct reports are. And it's also for them to know who the person that they go to when they have key questions to ask, to make them feel confident in their new role. It's also about management support, building trust, demonstrating leadership, listening to what's working and what's not working, and providing the right support at the right time. And fostering teamwork, encouraging team collaboration and cross-functional working, so the individual gets used to working within the team, knowing their role as an individual, but also as part of the team. And growth and development, understanding what motivates them, and identifying opportunities as they grow for both them as an individual and within the team. Nurturing the desire to succeed is an extremely important part of a new employee's journey. Everybody who starts a new role is wanting to succeed in that role. Letting them know what expectations you have for them in the months ahead is really important, not just during the induction or the probation, but at month 1, for example, or month 2 or month 3, letting them know where you expect them to be. And likewise at month 6 or even through to month 12. And what does the role look like? And what should they be doing to make sure that they are on the right track, focused on the right goals? Planning reviews is also important. Not annual appraisals is the only option for somebody to sit down with someone and talk about their role, how they're doing and what they should be doing. Break them up, make them more regular, maybe on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but also make sure that they're meeting with the right person who should be delivering the review. Who is it with? When is it happening? And what does it look like? Team dynamics, and we've heard this earlier on from the contributors, is really important as well. The team dynamics of somebody when they join a company is how they gel with that new team. How is the communication going? Are you checking in with them? Are they aligning with what works and do they understand the goals, both as an individual and as part of the team. And identifying their strengths and upskilling, know what their aspirations are and their motivations. If you combine this with daily check-ins, asking questions and clarifying expectations, it will lead to no assumptions and they will seek feedback at the right time. It's about also valuing their contribution to the job that they're doing. They want to feel valued. You need to provide purpose and make their tasks meaningful and build their motivation, and recognise and appreciate the job that they do, letting them know by acknowledging that it's well done and praising them and keeping them informed of any changes. One of the things when you are a new employee and as you move through on that journey is lack of confidence or motivation when you're not informed of new changes. And display that recognition not to the individual alone, but within the team. Let them know how they're doing within the team, how they are growing and how they are developing. Growth and development is continuous, and it's about asking the right questions. You want them to be successful and they want to be successful. It's about a win-win situation. Know whether they're motivated in the work that they do, and what can you do to provide them with new challenges or new tasks. And do they have the opportunity to fully utilise their strengths and skills in the work that they're doing? Because as they're progressing and they're developing, they need to know what else they can aspire to. And can they learn through collaboration by maybe mentoring with others? Or do you have other resources that are available? Look at their journey and see what you can provide in growth and development. And finally, in summary, it's about the basic needs, making sure they're met and be clear about their goals and expectations, way beyond the induction and probationary period, and ensure that the management support is demonstrated through leadership, consistent and structured, and foster and encourage an environment where the teamwork is a dream work, and identify those opportunities for growth and development. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Natasha. Some great advice there. And I think it's really clear to see that actually, you know, the process of development needs to continue way beyond the induction, or that motivation, you know, has the risk of kind of collapsing and they can start to look at the grass greener on the other side and things like that. And I do think it's important and helpful then when you encourage them in that development conversation to start to take some responsibility, I think, for that development themselves and get a sense of what their career aspirations and goals are. So again, I'm hearing a lot from you that we've heard from Nikki and Dominica. It's all about keeping the conversation lines open and keeping that conversation flowing so you get to know the person and what makes them tick. And where you can, I suppose, add value to the development and support that. But I have a question here from the audience, Natasha, that I'd like to put to you. We've had the same training in place for quite a time now and feel it suits our needs. But what would you recommend if we were to evaluate if we need to make changes? What would your advice be on that?
I think that there's no one training that fits all. And I think one of the big things that organisations need to do is, one, make sure that it's blended in its approach, and also that the content is reviewed on a regular basis, because you can then reach to a wider audience. But two key things: evaluate the feedback from the training to see what's worked and what hasn't worked. But not only train employees, you need to train the managers as well, especially when you're talking about reviews and you're looking to grow and develop new employees, or any employees in that fact.
Yeah, really sound advice there. And it's interesting what you say, because I know when we did a HR masterclass series with Caroline Reedy last year, a lot of the HR managers said that to us. They said, you know, some of the gaps for them was actually getting the line managers and the team leaders confident in their role of managing feedback, handling performance conversations day to day, as well as, I mean, I know the structured conversations, you might have a HR manager or you might have the business owner side by side with you there, but actually just getting comfortable with that day to day handling feedback and giving that feedback, and the sandwich approach that Nikki was talking about. So thanks so much for that. So before I move on now to our next speaker, I'm actually going to just ask Aoife that we have poll 4, please, which is list the common tools you use to develop effective team performance. So select any of those that apply and that you are using in your businesses right now. And while you're doing that, I'll actually introduce Caroline for anybody who hasn't been with us on the last 2 webinars or previously. Caroline is from the HR suite, and going to talk to us about managing the whole probationary period and maintaining proper records of this. And I think we can again call back to Caroline's book on the art of asking the right questions, where she has some really useful guidance on induction and great tips and insights on the role of the coach in and team leaders and line managers with responsibility for managing that day-to-day performance. For those who haven't met Caroline before, she's Managing Director of the HR Suite, a HR employment law expert firm, and she's a former member of the Low Pay Commission and an adjudicator on the Workplace Relations Commission, with expertise as a trainer, presenter, keynote speaker, expert investigator and trained mediator. So delighted to have Caroline back on this. But just before I hand over to Caroline, if we could Aoife, have the last results there of the poll. So a mixed thing there, but I think the regular one-to-one check-ins and the use of supervision, observing and SOPs are probably the strongest two there, as well as recognising and celebrating customer feedback with staff. That's really, really good to see. Maybe less so as things like structured shift briefings, debriefings and handover and that buddy system. So maybe we'll see more of that being brought into play in the future for you because of the benefits associated with this. And just on that, there's a great buddy system guidance note in the supporting resources that we have in the resource pack that we'll be sending you a link to on foot of today's session. So no excuses not to get started to look at the power of that buddy system as well to support your onboarding and management efforts. So Caroline, without further ado, over to you, please. And before we start, actually, Caroline, there's just a question here. I'm just interested to know, out of interest, have you come across any company who does onboarding really well?
There's lots that do it really well, and I think it's following a lot of the key ingredients that the other contributors have mentioned today. But probably one that does it exceptionally well is McDonald's. I think we all love interviewing somebody who has come from the McDonald's training school because they're really super in terms of consistency. They're really good at making sure that you as a new employee know exactly what to expect in each day of your training. And they're also really focused at making sure you've got that buddy system, because the best intent in the world, the manager, the supervisor could be busy or distracted with other things, but that buddy is their priority to look after you. So I think there are some of the key ingredients that make McDonald's stand out, Amanda, at being particularly good.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because one of the things that actually I'm hearing in the background conversations with my kids and their friends is they would recognize McDonald's as one of the leaders in the industry at being supportive about things like study leave for them in college, so that flexibility give and take system. And it's interesting that mine would, my kind of 19 and 22-year-old would put a lot of credence to that. So it's interesting how they're also associated with that positive kind of welfare aspect as well. So that's great, Caroline. So maybe tell us a little bit more then, how do we best manage this probationary period to ensure we get it right for both sides?
Super, thanks, Amanda. And I suppose for me, probation is all about, we've gone through a very thorough recruitment process. So our expectation is that every person that goes through probation is going to be successful, but we want them to help them hit the ground running as fast as possible and make them feel as welcome as possible. And to do so, it's really important we maximize the opportunity of probation. The great news is, I suppose, probation management is an extension of the recruitment process. So like you've started out with setting an expectation for what it's going to be like to work in your environment, and now you need to make sure you live up to that expectation, but you also need to make sure that the person can live up to their end of the bargain as well, or else we support and coach them to meet that requirement. It's similar to a trial period, but in this scenario, the employee has, I suppose, a set period of time to work towards those goals. And it's really important we set out very clearly the expected standards and objectives, because particularly if this is the person's first job, it's important that you explain what the standard is, because the standard we set is the standard we get, and showing them and giving them that coaching is really important to that. It also gives the employee an opportunity to demonstrate the skills they've said they have at the interview, and also maybe skills you didn't know they had. And it's important we ask them loads of questions, probe them, coach them to identify those skills. It's also a brilliant opportunity to make sure our culture fit and our values are right. And for most employees that fail probation, its culture fit isn't right, because remember, we're recruiting for attitude and we're training for aptitude, and we really need to do that during probation. And always give lots of clear feedback as we go. So the aim of probation is to ensure that everybody is crystal clear via loads of communication that these are the objectives and standards, and this is what the expectation of the job is. And ultimately, as a result of that clarity and that ongoing communication, we're going to have a successful probation for both parties. So huge benefits to probation around the evaluation and training, because it's a set program normally, and induction and probation are very closely linked. And as you start out, you're encouraging the person to ask loads of questions, get loads of support during their probationary period, because that's what it's designed for. It's also a really good time limit for us to make a decision, because if you have somebody who is absolutely unsuited to the organisation, we need to make sure we manage that very early on and try and remedy it and nip it in the bud, or if we can't, we manage that through probation. And ultimately, poorly managed probation can have huge costs, because you've got people who are not hitting the ground running. And as everybody knows in the industry at the minute, we're really looking for people to have all hands on deck, but don't compromise the need for somebody to be all hands on deck by not training them properly during their probation, because ultimately they're going to be more successful if we manage their induction and their probation proactively rather than throw them in at the deep end. It's got a really big impact on the employee. We heard Amanda mentioning her children there and the feedback that they were giving in relation to McDonald's. And again, the employee having a good experience, they're going to tell all their friends, etc. And from an employer branding point of view, that's so important. But also somebody who has a good experience during probation and induction is much more likely to settle into the organisation and want to stay and see it as an organisation that they have opportunities to progress, which is what we want, because training the person early and helping them be a good performer as part of the team is going to really add value. So let's talk about the probationary period then. So the advice is that probation shouldn't be any longer than 11 months, because over 12 months, the Unfair Dismissal Acts apply. And that means 11 months plus any notice the person may have. So try and keep probation for under 11 months. You need to ensure that it's clearly outlined in the contract of employment and it's in writing. The duration of the probation should be clear and again specified in the contract. Some organisations have it 3, 6 months or 11 months. You can extend it, however, it's generally better to have it longer, and you can pass somebody's probation sooner should you so wish. And remember, it's also really important to not be disillusioned that if you let somebody go during probation, they still have employment rights, particularly if they're around the area of equality, the 9 grounds we mentioned during recruitment, like age, gender, etc. Or indeed if there's anything that might be to do with membership of the traveller community, trade union activity, pregnancy, parental leave, etc. So you always need to tread carefully when you're doing any form of probation, and again, this is no different. So the huge overarching theme for me in relation to any HR matters are always to communicate, communicate and communicate more, and try and ensure that there isn't a vacuum, that there's no feedback, because employees generally will fill the gap themselves, and if you don't give them feedback, they're going to make the assumption that maybe they're not performing as well as they should, or maybe they'll think they're doing better than what they should. So make sure you give feedback on a consistent and an ongoing basis, and make sure you give way more positive feedback than constructive feedback, because our whole aim is that we want to motivate these people, make them feel that they're part of the culture and the positivity of our organisation. So any opportunity you have to give positive feedback, make sure you do. If you need to give constructive feedback, you need to do that as well, but always make sure that you balance it and you're not just giving one over another. And I think that's kind of an important point which came up in the poll and in the other contributors' advice also. The importance of training your managers to be able to give good feedback is really important. So let's look at the probationary process, and ultimately you would normally try and do a meeting in month 1, month 3 and month 5. So month 1 is a brief check-in, month 2 is a more deep dive to ensure the person is settling in well and they're meeting the job requirements, and by month 5 you should really know that the person is performing. So try and have those 3 meetings scheduled in the diary and make sure you involve the person's line manager in that probationary period. And either if the manager is trained, they might be able to do it themselves, which is super, or they might need your coaching or support, but they should always be involved because they have first-hand examples that they can give in relation to brilliant performance and areas that they need to improve. So make sure you invite the person, give them clarity in relation to the process. Make sure you keep notes and minutes during the meeting. Make sure it's a two-way conversation. Like during any of the meetings you have with employees, you should be brilliant at asking great questions and brilliant at listening, rather than communicating just to tell. It's really important we ask and we give them that opportunity to tell us what we don't know already. Make sure you send a follow-up after the meeting, and also make sure you keep any correspondence on file so that you can develop and build on that for the next meeting. So the key elements of your approach to probation is to discuss how they're getting on. So lots of focus on the positives and what they've done well, how they're settling in, how they're fitting into the culture, etc. Then discuss any areas that you need them to improve on. And always, as I say, ask the questions. So start out by asking them what's going well, then ask them what isn't going so well, and then you can build on that by highlighting those areas for improvement as well. Give them the opportunity to tell you how they feel they're getting on in the role. Offer them any support that they need. Remember, each person we're advising would have a buddy, so you're going to incorporate the feedback you receive into the buddy, focusing on supporting them more in that regard. And also make sure that you offer them retraining or any other support that they may need. And the earlier you do that, the better. Hence why it's so beneficial for the buddy and the line manager to be very proactive at nipping things in the bud and helping the person to succeed as best we can. And if you have somebody who is performing really poorly and you've given them all the feedback, it's really important that there are no surprises and you don't wait until meeting 1, 3 or 5 to give them the feedback. You meet them as soon as possible to flag your concerns and then give them an opportunity to let you know their feedback as well. So great managers are going to ask the right questions, press the right triggers to motivate and positively get the most out of the individual, and they're also going to understand their learning styles to ensure we give them the best opportunity for success. So key considerations during the probation period is be fair and reasonable. Give them the very best chance that you can. Make sure you keep a very good paper trail. And make sure you give them due process. So you need, if you give them feedback to improve, give them 2 weeks and meet them again in 2 weeks. Or if it's reasonable that they need longer, give them longer. So you've got to make sure you give the process fairness and overarching, fully focused on success for the employee. So hopefully we're going to get to the successful stage of passing probation, which is where most employees end up. And you make sure you celebrate that as a really nice milestone for them and inform they've successfully passed their probation. For many, they need confirmation for a loan or a mortgage, etc. And it's really important to them that they achieve that milestone. And when that letter is drafted, send it to the employee and also copy it on their file. And if you have a scenario where you need to pause the probation, so if somebody is out sick somebody's on layoff, somebody's on a different type of leave, and they're not available for you to test and measure how they're getting on, and vice versa for them to give them the opportunity to show you how they can perform in the role and get the appropriate training. It's important you write to the person to let them know that their probation is going to be paused during that time. So again, they understand what's going on and how that's going to be extended as a result. So the hope is we're not going to be in the situation of somebody's probation needing to be extended or failed, but on occasion that does happen. Sometimes the person expects the job to be different, and maybe the skills or the culture fit isn't right after you making every effort to support the employee. Whether you're extending it or you're failing the person's probation, it's really important that you inform them of the reasons. Make sure that you give them a letter to explain what the issues are that has resulted in the extension and give them that opportunity to improve. Or indeed, if they have failed and they haven't met the required standard, you explain that as well. And before the end of the probation, you need to make sure that all this is done, and it shouldn't come as a surprise, because you should be meeting the person as often as necessary if there is the need to do so. And finally, it's important to maybe revisit the whole area of training, including legal compliance. So maybe they have breached something, maybe they haven't full clarity on what's expected of them. So go back and maybe consider retraining, and without doubt also consider training your managers to give really good feedback and to manage people very proactively during the probationary period. So thanks, Amanda, over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. And, you know, folks, there's some amazing questions coming in here, but I'm in the interest of time, I'm just going to hold on the questions, and we may have to come back to some of you individually. But I'm going to now ask Michael Quinn to join us from our Tourism Careers Unit. But just before I do, we might take the poll number 5, please, Aoife, if that's all right. So how often do you meet with staff during their probationary period? Is it weekly, monthly, every 3 months, only at the end of probationary review, or we don't use any probationary reviews? And there's a great question there in terms of who should be joining and attending the meeting during probation. Is it okay that it's the line manager and not HR? And I probably would say yes, absolutely, the line manager should be part of that. But ideally, if you have a HR function, you'd probably involve them at either the interim, but definitely the final probationary review. So they're part of the formal probationary review closeout period as well. So just we might take the results of that poll for question 5, if possible, Aoife, and then we'll hop over straight to my colleague Michael Quinn, if that's okay. So some people are still not using probationary reviews, some only at the end, every 3 months, monthly, weekly, but great to see some people doing that weekly and monthly, because I think to all of the contributors' points, that communication line is really helpful, and keeping that in a mix of informal conversation and formal probationary conversations is really important. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Michael Quinn from our Tourism Careers Unit, who really wants to just share with us some other supporting recruitment activity that the Tourism Careers team are busily involved with to try to help your recruitment efforts this year. So over to you, Michael. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Amanda. Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to, I suppose, remind some of you and then introduce some others to some of the things that we're doing to support the recruitment, as Amanda said. The first thing I just want to flag is the Recruitment Toolkit. Now, we launched this last year, and you'll see what's in there. There's lots of advice and guidance, whether it's social media or places where you can post your job ads. The place that you can find that is falchireland.ie/tourism careers. And just to say that that's going to be updated tomorrow to incorporate some of the things that we've had in the previous webinars. And so it's going to be a refreshed toolkit that basically, you know, speaks to wider audiences, not just the younger people, but also, I suppose, all those generations that we spoke to in previous in the previous webinars here. So just keep your eye out there and check that out at falchireland.ie/tourism careers. And the other thing you may have heard about is our transition year work experience program. So we've got off to a brilliant start. We've got over 150 businesses that have posted their placements. It's driving traffic massively there, and it's being supported by a marketing campaign across social media and print. You may have seen some articles in the Business Post and the Irish Times, also interviews with Paul Kelly and Jenny DeSaules about it as well. So you can see some of the marketing there for businesses on the right. You'll probably see this in papers coming up. But again, if you need to post your placements or you want to check it out, look at fulchireland.ie/tours and careers, and there's a specific area there for the TY program, which also gives you the training materials and the manuals that we've developed both for employer and for students. So if you haven't done a TY program before, there's lots of guidance there, and you know, it explains the importance of doing it right with the mentorship and things that we've touched on here before as well. It's all transferable and it's all usable. So have a look there, and you might get yourself some really, you know, valuable part-time or seasonal work with people in your local area. Moving on, we're delighted to basically announce that we will be launching our collaboration with the Department of Social Protection. This is to allow businesses from tourism and hospitality to really get the benefits from the Pathways to Work strategy, and specifically the Work Placement Experience Programme. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's essentially attracting staff from the live register, but there are financial benefits for employers who will take part in this. And obviously you can recruit at any point during the placement, but we'll do a webinar on the 13th of April to really explain the intricacies of this and the benefits to the businesses. And as part of this, we'll also be launching our new training modules, which are on our learning management system, which also come with career pathways, training pathways, and also there are some agreed role profiles that you can use to make it easier for you to post your jobs on jobsireland.ie. So we'll explain that all, so you should keep an eye out for an invite in the coming weeks for that webinar on the 13th of April. And just to say also, we don't have lots of detail on this just now. We're at briefing stage, but we're going to build on the success of our recruitment awareness campaign last year, which I know a lot of the industry found very helpful, and just basically getting that positive buzz with our radio ads and our print ads and their social media campaigns. And we're going to launch in the coming weeks our 2002 recruitment awareness campaign ahead of the season. This will also include some profiling in national media of those who are really thriving in their careers, whether they come from, you know, they're newbies or they've been there for a while, and also businesses that are doing a really good job in terms of recruitment and retention. And this will obviously, you know, really get a positive message out there and tell the stories of those who make this industry special. And so again, from further information, keep your eyes peeled on fulchireland.ie/tours and careers, and you'll get lots of information there across all of these things. Well, thanks a million. Cheers, Amanda.
That's great, Michael. Thanks so much. Oh my God, there's so much going on there to help and support the efforts of each individual business, and it's really about leveraging that. So please do keep an eye out for what Michael is talking about, and that also that a webinar coming up on April the 13th. We'll be in contact with you about that, and the other information is all available on the Tourism Careers page of the Fulch Ireland website, so please do not forget that. Just before we go into the final closeout from myself, I just want to cover one or two questions here that have come up, and I'll do that while we're taking the last poll question, please, if that's okay, Aoife. So do you keep probationary records? And you can let us know how you manage that within your business. But I just have a question here from Orla Murphy there. Is there a law coming in this year regarding probation that can only be 6 months? And actually, Orla, I spoke to Caroline about this before we came on, and that's a European piece of legislation, and there's no indication yet that the Irish legislators will be adopting that as yet. So nothing in the short term on that, but yes, further down the line, Orla, but we'll keep you well advised on that. But there's nothing to affect that at the moment. And then very quickly, if I can ask Caroline to come back in, please. Just whether or not, Caroline, if there is an issue, with somebody who you haven't had the opportunity to issue a contract to, and they're delivering poor performance during probation or regarding attendance, it's a serious concern. How do you deal with that? So you might just reiterate the legislative guidelines around the contract and when that needs to be given, and how do you deal this off now with a poor performance issue if there's actually not a contract there? So tough question, Caroline, but sorry, I'm going to ask you on that one.
No bother. So what I would say, Amanda, is that even if somebody hasn't received the contract straight away, I'd give it to them as soon as you realise they haven't got it, because it's a legal obligation that you do, and then at least there's clarity. And hopefully you've covered in your induction the probationary process, which means at least you have that as somewhat as a fallback, but still not meeting your legal obligation, as you mentioned there, but it's better than not doing it at all.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So look, I'm just going to ask if we take the results of that one on the probationary period, and while we do that, I'll actually move then into closing out. So great to see over 50% of you carrying out formal records. But there's still quite a number that either don't keep records or just keep notes. And really, when you're talking about performance management and driving optimal team performance, there is a need for that structure, because it gives clarity to you and clarity to the individual of the expectations required for both. So if you haven't started that, maybe today will inspire you to get that started and embedded in the business. So I might just move on just to the final slides, please, to close out and to summarize. I'm just conscious of everybody's time. So just to flag to you, and Nikki spoke about it earlier, and so did Natasha, we do have some induction and staff skills trainer tools available on our Fáilte Ireland site, things like an introduction to customer service, fundamentals of food and beverage, and they're online modules that people can do in their own time. And they're also, the fundamentals of food and beverage service are available as short, sharp videos, usually of about 5 to 7 minutes long, but really helpful, particularly for maybe some of those new recruits that haven't experience in the industry, or particularly the likes of Michael, what Michael was saying there about those TY students that actually you want to use to help fast track their skills development. So really handy tools available to you there. And then that whole area of developing and implementing standards of performance, we have some 2 really good 30-minute videos there online about how to start to look at developing them, and then how to optimize the implementation of them. So if you haven't started to look at standard operating procedures as yet in your business, please do take a look at those resources. And additionally then, other supports we have on the Business Support Hub, all of the resources over the webinar series we have here on the Business Support Hub. There's over 40 resources available to you there now over the course that we've discussed over the course of the 3 webinars. Please do check them out in your own time, and even if it's to just adapt 1 or 2 of those as a starting point and build from there, or even share those resources out with other team members, is really worthwhile. And also to highlight to you that there are also supports available and other training available in our national training schedule and our capability building schedule that's on the Business Support Hub. So do check out that tab there as well. There's a full list of training coming up over the next 6 to 8 months, and it's an ongoing dynamic listing of training, and your staff can avail of that at a time that suits themselves, and they can self-help themselves to that training. So really handy resource there, and training, a lot of that training available online, so it doesn't even require them to leave the business. But everything from digital to sales and marketing to climate action programs and finance and commerciality. So a lot of huge supports there available to your team ongoing throughout the year. And finally then, I suppose, just it'd be remiss of me not to just wrap up with a few key takeaways from today. So really, I think the key thing here is when planning your induction, step into the employee's shoes and start to consider it from their perspective, what they need to know, what they need reassurance on, what will help them embed into your business and align with your business goals and the culture of the organisation, so they feel that they're a fit as soon as possible. Plan the induction programme well. I think Nikki's given us a great template for how we to do that, and to ensure this balance then between the IITT, so the information share, the training, embedding the culture of the team, the familiarisation tour, and a little bit of fun and social aspect to it as well. The power of the buddy system can't be ignored, but do choose those roles carefully, and there's great guidance material on that in our resources, so do check that out. The staff training requirements for team leaders and line managers, I think that's really interesting, and I think your poll question and answers there was quite interesting. Maybe we don't provide enough support to our line managers and team leaders around that, so is there something more we could do there, and is there something more we can help you with there as well? So keep the communication lines open. I think that was a common thread across everybody's conversation and expert advice and guidance and insights today. Use performance appraisals as well to identify training needs and provide supports as required, and allow the person and encourage the recruit to take some responsibility for their own staff development as they go, as well as you providing access to supports from within the business. And finally, just to say, managing probationary periods in a structured way with detailed records, really important. Involve the line managers and the HR owner in at least the interim and probationary review, but it really gives clarity to both parties as to what's the expectation of the standards required, where they're doing well, reinforcing the positives, and also building on that in terms of further development. So I think that's over and out for today, but just to say, it leads me to thank you hugely for the time you've taken to be here with us today, whether it's today or over the last 2 webinars, and to any of you as well who've had to join and watch subsequently in our recordings. We trust it's given you plenty of food for thought, plenty of resources to work with, and plenty of opportunity to look at real ways of practical and tactical things that you can do to help your onboarding process. And on behalf of the Falch Ireland team, I'd like to say a huge thanks to all our contributors over the 3 webinar series, but most especially to you for being here and taking the time. I'd like to wish you a happy St. Patrick's Day and weekend of celebrations, and I hope this double public holiday is a really special this year and is a great kick-off to the start of the season as well for all of us. From all of us here and from our guest experts, Slán agus Bana.